Well, welcome to It Is What It Is. I am Shaw Marie, and I am your lovely host. How is everyone doing? Hopefully well. But, so I know pretty much anybody who listens to this, obviously you guys are true crime fans, so I'm pretty sure half of you guys watched the ABC's In the Cold Dark Night 2020. And it's just super heartbreaking. And I want to tell you guys about it, but before I do, I just want to tell you that the South fascinates the shit out of me. Mainly because I feel, I don't know, there's so much there. There's so, okay, so we're going to talk about Georgia, for instance. Okay, so Georgia was founded in 1977, and Idaho was only founded in 1890. So that's 102 years difference, right? So Idaho, we have a bunch of Indian history. They call it, we have Indian reservations and stuff like that. And so we have a beautiful history of our own from back then, where Idaho comes from and all that stuff. So we have that here. But down there, the South is just, in my eyes, so old. And I'm obsessed with old stuff. Anything old. Literally, you call 40 years ago is old to me. I love it. Nostalgia. Anything like that, I'm obsessed with. And they had the mining and I understand California and all that stuff, the gold rush, and I get it. But they had everything first. Well, that's the way it was presented to me, so that's the way I take history. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Fuck off. Anywho, so Georgia, mind you, okay, is 30 hours away if you Google it from Idaho Falls to where I'm going to talk about in Georgia is 30 hours away. So that's a day and a half. You know what I mean? That's a hell of a drive. So that's through, I think when I counted the states on the map, it was 5 states you drive through. Even if it's just the corner of that state, you still drive through it. So I counted it 5 states or something like that, just to get there from where I am. So for me to go to Georgia, it would be completely out of my comfort zone, because I'm I've never left Idaho. Well, I have. I've been to Wyoming, Montana, my surrounding states, Washington, shit like that, but that's as far as it goes. So it just fascinates the shit out of me. So that's why, really, and I do not understand racism. I don't. I am very naive when it comes to racism because I wasn't around it. I didn't know it. I heard about it. I was taught it. Not taught it by my parents, but taught it in school with slavery and the week of being a color and being segregated in school. I did all that. And so that's my teachings of racism. So mind you, it's not as informative as I should say, as it should be from where I'm from. It's not. It's just plainly not. There's no other defense for it. But so I was not taught racism. I don't understand racism. I don't know how someone's skin color can make you so mad that you don't like a person. That to me is fucking mind-blowing. And I just don't like a person for what they've done to me. You know what I mean? I respect everybody up until the point where you show me you don't really need it nor deserve it. So that's where my judgment of I like you or don't like you. It's never in my entire life been I don't like that person because they are a different color than me. That blows my mind. I'm always I don't like them because they're shady as hell. That's my reason half the time. So I just don't get it. And so when I watched this 2020, I am literally bawling my eyes out because the fact that this can happen, and then I watch these families that are involved, the white quote unquote white families that are involved. And I'm hella embarrassed. You know what I mean? Like the cockiness. And it's like, this episode kind of was like, oh shit, that's what people mean when they say like the words like white privilege or whatever. These people described their town and Georgia in 1982, 83, that like in the 1980s. They described their town perfectly, like the definition of what I think that maybe racism is, to be honest. It was such a needed to watch episode. It's truly, truly amazing. This story and the end of this story, like the coming together at the end of this story I'm going to tell you about. Dude, literally, I'm sitting here in tears, bawling my eyes out because it was so beautiful. And this is the shit the world needs to see. Like, I can't even believe that this kind of stuff happened in the world and that it took this long, like almost 40 years, for this crime to be solved, for this murder to have peace, for this place to wake up, and for one man, a sheriff, to come in and be like, I am done with this shit. I've seen it. I know it. It's here. I'm aware. It stops here and now. And to stand up for what is right just blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. Literally, guys, go watch it. If I don't describe this good enough for you and you walk away from this episode going like, well, I still don't know why she thought it was so great, go and watch it for yourself and then you'll understand. Like, I'm not even kidding you. It's sad, it's heartbreaking, but very eye-opening and very emotional, and like I just was taken back. So anyway, we'll get on to it. And I watched the episode, obviously, so I'm going to put in what I learned, but I wanted to give you guys like kind of a better breakdown. So when I Googled all this kind of stuff, this story, this website, heavy.com, kept coming up with the 5 things you should know about this, and that was like every other like Google thing was from that website. And so I was like, okay, we'll take their 5 things, I'll read you their 5 things, and then still tell you about the episode, and then you guys can obviously, you guys are all smart and amazing people, you guys will put it together yourselves. Bada bing, bada boom. Anyhow, as we go. So like I said, it was ABC in the Cold Dark Night 2020. And this is the 5 things you should know from heavy.com. And this is Timothy Coggins. And he was lured into a truck by Frankie and Bill outside of a nightclub in October of 1983, October 9th, where he had been dancing with a white woman. According to history, he was badly disfigured. The investigators at the time of his death were not able to immediately identify him. His murder case remained cold and closed through 6 sheriff administrations until Sheriff Darrell Dix, by the way, I am like crushing on him, and the Georgia Federal Bureau of Investigations, also known as the GBI, reopened it in December 16th, and in July of 2017, Dix publicly warned his killers, Timothy's killers, and their accomplices that he was coming for them, and that they did deliver upon this promise in October of 2018 when they arrested Frankie, Gebhardt, and Bill Moore, along with Gebhardt's sister, Sandra, the nephew and son, and George Hoffman. The prosecutor on the Timothy Coggins case called their first investigation of this 23-year-old man's death shameful, and it was horribly shameful. So they went through years of investigating to come and find out that it was like they had everything in front of them the whole time. All it took was someone with heart. I'm not reading from the page anymore. All it took was someone within the GBI and the cold case units that they get handed down. It just took somebody with a heart and compassion that read it and said, I have everything here in front of me to solve this, and to stand up for what was right, and to stand up for Tim and his family and do him justice. And that was thankfully what was done. So now when they went through the show, okay, the show starts off with Tim's family obviously telling you about him, and that their family has grown up knowing that no one in law enforcement cared enough to solve this man's murder and to give him justice. And this family was literally bullied, harassed, and tormented. Right after this man's death, there was a brick thrown through the window with like a note saying, "You're next." There was a bloody shirt left in one of the relatives' buses because he drove a bus. So there was a bloody shirt on a bus when the bus seat when he goes out. And like the cops come and they take the shirt, and that's all they ever hear. None of these guys, Frankie was interviewed by the police back then, but nothing was done. The files on this are all shady, missing. There's evidence is completely gone. What they have is very minimal and really doesn't add up to anything. And so when they're going through everything and before they arrest him, they know that Frankie has a whale on his property, and that he has built a add-on to his trailer that covers this. So they get a warrant, they tear that down, they start digging up the whale, and they find in the whale a knife blade, a thickened chain, burned clothing, a shoe, a sock, and when Tim was found, he was barefoot. And they also found a shirt with what appeared to be stab marks through the shirt. Now, they did not test any of this stuff because, mind you, it was in the bottom of a whale. And when I say that I was embarrassed for, the family of Frankie and Bill and all of them, it was their cockiness. And it was... You have Bill's daughter, who broke my heart mainly. I can't say the word embarrassed. That was probably the wrong word to use, so I take that back. Just in WTF of them. Let's just put it that way. I was in WTF of them. And, her cockiness is cockiness I've seen in myself. Because when you know someone in your family, or a close family friend, whatever have you, and they are convicted of a crime, you have a hard time looking past the person you know, okay? They may have committed the crime, but you have a hard time putting them in that scenario because you've known them your whole life. In this situation, it's her daddy. And they say her uncle at the bottom of the screen, and I don't know. I need to see the family tree on some shit. I don't know. But, okay, so her dad is Bill. His real name is, the legit name is William. But anyway, Bill Moore. And so it's her dad that's a part of this, one of the bad guys, and his buddy, Frankie. I don't like that name. I don't know why, but Frankie. So... they go to Frankie's house and they dig up the whale, okay? And that's where, like I said, they found the knife. And the knife is taken apart. It's a blade and a handle, and they're not together anymore. And then a thickening chain, the clothing, the shoes, and the sock. So, the only reason why they even think that maybe this is even connected is because these two have been running their mouths since the night of the murder. Like, following that, they've been telling people that they did it, but no one says anything. At least one guy did come forward, but the police shut it down. Like, they were like, cool, thanks for your story, we'll put it away, we'll never tell anybody, we'll never write this down. Awesome. So when when they go back to him these many years later, he's like, y'all could have solved this shit 30 years ago, because I already fucking told you guys what happened 30 years ago, but you this law enforcement did not choose to do anything with it, so why the hell do you care now? And like, they make it out, because in court, when they go to court with this, the witnesses that they have are a bunch of felons. No offense to any of y'all. Like I tell everybody in Idaho, if you ain't got a felony, you ain't cool. I ain't got one, so I ain't that cool. But like, everybody I know has a fucking felony. You ain't special for having a felony. I do not look upon you differently. But anyway, so I hit the mic thing, sorry. Anywho, so at court, they have a bunch of felons to testify the fact that these two have been saying from the very beginning that they killed, like they've been bragging about killing Tim for years. And of course, their legal team is like, jury, you guys cannot trust them because these guys are a bunch of fucking felons. And so they even asked one guy, they're like, why did you not come forward with this? And he was like, I fucking did. No one cared to believe it, so like, I had my own shit to do. I was already committing a bunch of crimes. So like, I spoke up once, no one cared to do anything. I went off on my own shit. Like, I already said my piece, good sir. I stood up one time. I said what I said, no one cared. I went about my day. So really, and I believe the jury looked at it and they were like, okay, but y'all's story about these guys are not credible does not stand, because these guys are credible. They just happen to be telling people that were in law enforcement that were shady as hell. Law enforcement covered this murder up from the get-go. Like, from the very beginning, it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Okay, so like I said, when they do that, the daughter is like, they interview her and she's like, I got a call this morning from my grandma that a bunch of law enforcement men are digging up her will. The only thing they're going to find in that will is a bunch of dirt. That's about it. And that's not what they found, like I already said. And so, already, you know what I mean? If I am her already, I'm like, okay, well, that, like, obviously, that doesn't link them, because it's not, you can't prove it's Tim's shoe, you can't prove it's Tim's shirt, you can't prove that's where the chain was used, you can't, you know what I mean? There are stuff like that you can go off of, but at the same time, when you said that there was nothing in the bottom of this whale, and they come up with these things, and these are the things missing from this murdered man, 2 and 2, bro, you know? You can't really fight that. So, like I said, they did not test anything. They can't do any of that because of where it was found. And by the time that they go to the trial in 2018, all they really have is the shit from the whale. They have an impression of the rock, and they have his pants and his underwear, and something else they list off. I can't recall, but that's all they have. Everything else is gone. And they find a little black book from somebody who infiltrated the KKK down there and was writing everything. And so that's all they have, is they have witnesses and this evidence that you really can't convince me would be there for any other reason except for it's Tim's. You can't tell me, well, I lost a shoe down there one time, or like my family always, we were throwing our shoes all the time. You can't explain that. You just can't explain any of the things that were found down there when they all connect, bam, 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 and line up with the things that are missing and things that led to this man's death. So you can't. I'm sorry, but you just can't. So like I said, and it was all gone, dude. just gone and no one knows. And that's what sucks when you're dealing with a shady ass department, is everything that you need they got rid of. And it's not just like, oh, this was 1 or 2, 3 cops. This was a small little department and in a town mainly ran by white people. And so they were recruiting members of the KKK to be in the law enforcement. So when a young black man like this gets brutally murdered, of course there's not going to be a nice, neat file of everything that happened. And that's just so shitty. People's consciences, man, I swear to God. So that's number 1, okay? That's number 1 that they say, is you cannot deny the fact that these 2 men constantly talked about it and that the things were found in the will. Obviously, that links them. Bam, bam. That's number 1. Number 2 is that they did charge everyone, because some people have said, of course, that they just want to give this family, the Coggins family, someone to blame. And that's just not the case, because Mr. Dix did exactly what he said he was going to do, and he went after everyone. And the reason why Frankie's sister was charged in her part of obstruction, like her part of obstruction and whatever, is because she was telling him not to give over DNA and warning him not to, like, they were tapping the phone calls between the sister and the brother. And she says, and this is like one of like the most, I felt a bunch of pride when I watched her say this, but she has this little bitchy look on her face, and she says he was the only sheriff she's ever had problems with like that, and she was from this little town in Georgia her whole life, and she ain't ever had no problem with no other sheriff but Mr. Dix. I want to call him Dixon, I don't know why, but Mr. Dix. And I brought so much happiness, because it was like, finally, honey, someone's standing up to you and your fucking corrupt family. Like, y'all been using fear and intimidation, and finally, someone was going to stand up to your family and tell you, I am not scared, honey. And he did. Because what happened was, so she's on the phone, and she's like, don't you give him your DNA. Nothing like that. And so then the sheriff goes and gets a warrant, and he goes to Frankie, and he's like, check it out, bro, you're going to give me that DNA. And Frankie's like, no, I ain't. And so they start arguing about it. And Mr. Dix takes off his fucking badge, right? Bam! Throws it across the room, and he's like, check it out. I'm gonna get it. Either I'm gonna swab the back of your fucking throat like a gentleman, or I'm gonna pick up your DNA up off this floor. You tell me, sir, which way we're gonna do this. And since Mr. Frankie did not get his ass whooped, I'm assuming he opened up his mouth and said, oh, you are not playing around. Okay. And she was mad as hell. Mad as hell. And this whole family got an awakening, at least the way the show appears it to be, that, like, y'all are touchable. And it was heartbreaking because, like, for me being so naive to racism and everything else, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh my god, this family, for like, they are just like shit and bricks. Because what do you do when you've been able to run amok for so long, and then finally someone comes and says the law is the fucking law? And I said, no, you must fucking just shit yourself, run in a million directions like a chicken with its head cut off. Like, I don't know what you would do. Like, I've just never gotten special treatment like that, where, like, I could do anything and everything I've ever wanted, and then someone finally stops me. And, like, those people, I see why they get so hateful, because I would too. It's like being told yes your entire life, and then finally someone comes and tells you no, and you throw the biggest fit you've ever seen. Hell yeah, they throwing a fit. What does no mean? You know what I mean? That's exactly what happened here. And they were like, excuse me? You're going to make me? Oh shit, you're going to make me. And he did. And it was just too damn funny. I don't even know. It was just too damn funny. Okay, so it says that 5 people were charged, and it was Frankie, and he was convicted of murdering him, and the jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison. And Bill Moore was the second person charged with murder, and in August of 2018, he pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter because Frankie went first and saw that the jury believed that the shit in the will obviously only ended up in the will from one main thing, the murder. And so he knew he was going to be fucked. And so his lawyer, who happened to be a black guy, I just want to point that out for everybody who doesn't watch this episode, so you cannot say that he was against, he hated all black people. He might have hated his lawyer, he just didn't show it. But he pled guilty to that, so that was I don't know if it was eye-opening to the family or not, but... And then he pled guilty to the manslaughter and concealing the death of another, and he was sentenced to serve 20 years plus 10 years probation for the concealment. And that they say he was in poor health. He went to the court in a wheelchair, and it said, Moore is his brother-in-law. Okay. So Bill is the brother-in-law to Frankie. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So they were charged, the sister and the nephew and the Hoffman fella were all charged with obstruction in the case. And they were officers at the time. The son and the nephew were officers, and they were fired. Yeah. And suspended without pay, so pretty much fired. Oh, Hoffman, sorry, not the nephew, not the son. It was the nephew and Hoffman. They were officers, and they were no more. They were officers no more. So the jury counted 17 times with everybody's testimony. 17 times where these two men admitted it to this murder. And almost every case was exactly what happened to this man. He was stabbed over 30-something times, okay, and on his, I think it's his chest. It was 7 times, it was in the pattern of the Confederate flag. And so, and that was told a million times. Okay, so... Number 3, this is the worst part. So this is the 1983 autopsy report that kind of summons. It says that he died from multiple stab wounds and that Tim was brutally murdered and found in a field by hunters about 36 hours after his death. So they say that he was so unrecognizable at the time of his death that they had to take a picture and kind of go around and try to see if anybody could identify him. So he was stabbed multiple times in the back. Both of his lungs were punctured. He had defensive wounds on his arms where he was shielding his body. And the what are they called? Morticians, autopsy guy. He said that he had been worked over with a knife pretty well. So the investigators had evidence including samples of blood-stained clothing, tire tracks, and the photos and articles, and that he was stabbed about 30 times, and he was dragged behind a pickup truck and left there to die. He did not die from all of that. They left that man out there in the dark, hence the title, on a cold ass fucking night to die by himself. Just absolutely horrible. Ugh. And his throat, I think it was his throat they said was cut. Like, they just did a horrible, horrible number onto this man. And he was at that club that night with his sister. And, like, the guy that gave him a ride there told Tim, he's like, bro, you gotta stop messing with these white girls. They're gonna get you in trouble. And he was, like, dancing with this white girl or whatever. And the sister even said, she's like, I didn't like it, but not all of Tim's friends, but a bunch of his friends were white. So, like, he did not follow, the prosecutor said, quote unquote, the rules of 1983. Because it was very segregated there. And he did not go by that. Tim was like, I don't give a fuck who you be. If you're my friend, you're my friend. And so that's how he was. He was a very loving, caring man. And so the family was like, you shouldn't, but, like, we know you're gonna anyway. And so his sister was there, and, like, she remembers when she was going to the restroom, she saw Tim going outside with a white guy, and was like, that's weird. And when she came out of the bathroom and she went to go look for Tim and this white guy, she couldn't find him. And when the guy dropped him off, he even said it was super weird that there was, like, 3 white guys outside. 2 or 3, I think he said. Like, but anywho, there was 2 guys, but obviously, because they're the ones who are convicted of the murder. But he said it was awfully weird that they were even there to begin with, because this was not a white person's club. So it was weird. And he was like, I don't feel good about this, bro. And he did not know that he was dropping this young man off to his death. It's so terrible. Absolutely terrible. And they had to show, they wanted to show his family these pictures from the ones that they had, that they could find from whatever evidence was left. Showed his family his autopsy photos and everything else just so that they could see it before they went into court. Horrible. They're horrible. Absolutely horrible. I couldn't even imagine. And, like, just being told, like, we're going to show these. I know this is going to be the first time. I know you know how he died, but now let me give you the actual image of how it looked. And that's just, you don't come back from that. That's horrible. I mean, all up until then, you know that, yes, we'll use his niece because his niece is a big fighter for him, but she was like, her name is Heather, by the way. She knew her whole life, this is how my uncle died, but now she saw it. Like, she saw it. And, like, in your head, you can always envision it, but you never know how devastating it is till you actually see it. And now his family knows. And that's just so horrible to me. And that's just so tragic and breaks my heart. I was literally bawling. Even though, like, the TV, of course, censors it and I can't see it. Looking at this family's face. Well, if you have a heart, dude, you'll break down. Because that was just unbearable. It broke me. That was so sad. That should never be a family's last vision of their loved one. I just, I can't. Okay. So, number 4 is that they say that they killed him because he was socializing with white women. So, like, the main thing, they killed this man because white girls liked him? Like, think how unjust and how truly fucked up that is. To show her this is what happens when you go outside of your race, and to show the black people of that community, this is what happens when you dance with a white woman or date a white woman. Like, to me, that is so devastating and heartbreaking. And they said it multiple times. Like, they told everybody that's why. Well, and I guess that he was selling weed to white people because I guess they went to him to get drugs, and then they were like, this guy's obviously bad because he's selling drugs in a community. Like, you motherfuckers went to him. Oh, it makes me so mad. But they bragged about it, and so all those witnesses that they did talk to did come forward and say, like, they came forward and said, they told us, we know. And it just, oh my God, dude, I was so mad. So there's 2 black officers. And I'm sorry if anybody's, I don't know what word to use. I really don't. And they just kept using black man on the show. And the show literally just released like Friday. So I'm just assuming that that's legit and I can use it. So pardon me if I'm being very rude. I am truly not meaning to be. But these officers knew, like the sheriff at the time and a deputy at the time were so close to solving this that they were told, and we're done. No more. No more. And they interview, and like the jury gets to see these men and find out that like we were told to stop. And like that there obviously is a big cover up. And like the reason why this blows my mind is because there's legit people out there that believe that these 2 men were just pointed at and locked away because they wanted to lock someone away. But these 2 men, for years, have been telling these people, these 2 officers that were officers of the law, forget that they're black, they were officers of the law, knew that it was leading up to these 2 men being the ones who done it, and they couldn't do anything, and they were told to step back because they're getting too close to actually showing the truth. Like, and I get that, like, the daughter, her name's Brandy, I get where she comes from because she doesn't see her dad as this horrible monster that would do such a horrible, vicious thing. And he may not even be a monster. But at one point in time, one night in this man's life, he did a horrible, monstrous thing. And so I see how it's hard to look past that one night and look at your daddy that you knew at in the show. I believe she said she was 41 years old. But like, you've known this man your whole life. So I get it. But when stuff is presented to her and shown to her, it's saddening, y'all. Like, she goes to jail, too. Oh, God. I gotta tell y'all about that, too. So in the show, when they start Frankie's trial, right, because like I said, he goes first, and that's obviously her uncle, the judge says in the courtroom, he says, any of y'all gonna be testifying or witnesses or whatever, raise your hand. So everybody who is, they raise their hand. Brandy raises her hand. She's like, me. And so he's like, go out in the hallway. And they do the opening arguments or whatever, and all of a sudden a deputy comes in and he's like, hey, just so you know, there's a girl in the hallway and she's watching this on the live stream, and you told her no, but she is. And so the judge brings her back in, puts her on blast in front of everybody, and is like, didn't I tell you not to? And she tried to go, she's like, well, no, you didn't. And he's like, well, yes, I did. You're going to jail for 20 days. Thank you. Get the fuck on out. And they took her to the jail. And she said she only did like 2-3 days, but still. Like, guys, I'm telling you. Like, maybe they were harder on these people for the main fact that, like, these people did walk around with their noses up high in the air, acting like their shit don't stink. And about this case, I'm not saying that's how they all walked around, but like just about this case in general. And like Brandy said, she had never heard about this case her whole life. She had never heard nobody bring up Timothy's name her whole life. And so really it was something that was done and then by these 2 men forgotten. Meanwhile, Tim's family is in horrible agony from that night on, all the way up until 2018, 2017. That's a long fucking time, guys. From 1983 to 2017, 2018. That's a long time to not have answers for your loved one. And like one of his, I believe it was one of his cousins said, they had seen Bill and Frankie in the grocery stores and the gas stations, walking around town. These men got 36 something years life continuously after the crime they committed. So I mean, they are now grandparents. They had their children grew up. Like, just holy shit, mind-blowing. Like, I don't even know. Like, you guys, maybe I'm not even doing this case justice, but like this poor man, to just know, dude, that the only reason no one cared that your loved one was killed was because he was a black man breaks my heart. It tears me into a million pieces. That is not okay. And the fact that people were still living that, and that's not too long ago, 1983, and that they knew this whole time and already had spoken out previously. Some of them had already previously spoken out and were told, oh, don't worry about it, it's just another black guy who died, is fucking mind-blowing to me. The South, especially, it seems like in this part of Georgia, probably should go through their old cases, and maybe a bunch of those people are willing to step forward now and tell their story for whatever reason. It's a time to give all these people justice. And Tim is not the only black man who was wrongfully murdered there. He's just one of, I don't even know. And that's sad. I don't even know the true number. And it's like one of the guys on this show says, he's like a prosecutor or a journalist or some shit. He even says that like for years, white people there were not getting punished for killing black people. And so why would they think that in 1983 that they were going to get in trouble? Because the times is changing. You know what I mean? But like when you get away with it for so long, and then like I said, someone puts their foot down and says, okay, enough of the bullshit and the unjustness of the world, and just puts a stop to it. A court, like, I don't know, dude. Like, it just blew my mind. The fact that people were killed because they were black is horrible. And like, people might listen to this and you're like, oh my god, she's so naive, listen to this little white girl complain about it, now she feels bad. I've always felt bad. I've always thought it was wrong. Like, you know what I mean? But like, now, since the unfortunate passing of George Floyd and everything else, they're releasing more and more of the true stories that America needs to hear of the unjust that happened to these people because of the fact that they were black. And us white people need to realize, like, I will admit I was really naive, guys, to the fact that, like, in my eyes, I was one of those people that were like, okay, black on black crime is that's a lot. And so there we go. If everybody just is nice and we don't kill black on black, white on white, everybody's nice, racism solved, right? Like, but no. This man was murdered and no one cared to give him justice because he was black. In 1983, that is not long ago. My husband was born 3 years later. You know what I mean? He's not an old guy. And I don't know why. I guess I was just super naive to think that racism was like hundreds and hundreds of years ago is when it was super bad or whatever. And it is because I am naive to it. But this is not that long ago. And this family was tortured nonetheless. And like, threatened and no one gave a shit, no one did anything, they all would stay in a house together to make sure that they, from time to time, to make sure that they were all secure and all safe. And he had a bunch of brothers and sisters, and imagine that being your sibling's death. And your sibling is just murdered, and that's it. That's all you ever get. You get to know that your brother died a horrible death, and that's it. That's all anybody's willing to give you because he was black. Are you out of your goddamn mind, dude? I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. So his niece, Tiffany, like I said, is just amazing. And she was very grateful. And she says, we don't have to tell anyone else this story, that Tim was from a small town where nobody cared. Where nobody cared and no one wanted to bring him justice for his murder. It wasn't just a murder. It was brutal. It was a heinous killing. And now we don't have to tell our kids or our grandkids anymore that no one cared for your Uncle Tim. Now we know someone who's guilty. Are you kidding me? This family should have been given justice back then, and I am just terribly sorry for them and devastated and heartbroken for them that it took this many years to get justice. I can't even imagine. And really, I understand and I get it that everybody is like, I'm so sick and tired of hearing about the racism. But really, I think when you're sick and tired of hearing about something is when you need to hear about it the most. And to get it in your head that it really is a problem. Like, it truly is a problem, no matter where you're from. Even if you're from little Idaho like I am, I'm saddened it's taken all of this devastation to truly open my eyes to the sadness of the world more, I should say, because like obviously I've been into true crime, so I always knew that there was injustice and like stuff like that, but like I said, I was naive to, like, I guess the time frame, the time frame, I would say I was very naive to. I don't know. I hate to think the fact that people are murdered and killed and taken off of this planet because their skin color. And it just breaks my absolute heart into a million pieces. And so I'm just... Timothy Coggins' family is just amazing. And and they say that, like, they know he's proud, and there's no way that he could not be proud of a family that never stopped wanting justice and needing that justice to be done. And so I'm glad you were finally given justice, and that you're remembered for more than just being a black man that was killed, and you were a person and you were somebody. And it's just saddening. And I truly hope that this case opens the eyes for a lot of people, and especially for people who are sitting on information about other crimes that have been committed that they want to come forward with that were racially motivated. And racially motivated crimes are the hardest for me to understand. I don't know why sexually motivated crimes are easier for me to understand. Mainly it's, I don't know. I won't get into that for this one, but I'll stop there on that. But racially ones, I don't get it. Those ones blow my mind. I don't understand. And they shouldn't happen. No crime should happen. But especially that, to get murdered because of your race is just one of the most fucked up things I think anybody could ever be taken out for. And it just breaks my heart. And it goes for all people, okay? I don't want any hate from anybody being like, oh, you don't care about white people. For one, if you're that racist, you probably shouldn't be listening to me. But like, I understand that racism is everywhere. Like I said, I live in Idaho, and in Idaho, when we had Idaho, we took this land from people. I am aware of that, so please do not blast me with that. I am aware that yes, racism goes with every group of skin color there is, every racial denomination, whatever you want to say. I'm aware of it, so don't come at me with that. I know the history of where I come from and the horrible things that the white, quote-unquote, white men did when they got here and everything else. So just know that really I wanted to tell you this story because Timothy's story is sad, and he went years without justice, almost 40 fucking years without getting justice because of the fact that he was black, and that is wrong. Absolutely wrong. And I hope to see more cases of racial homicide being solved, even from back then, giving the people that were just murdered just because of the fact that they were black from the South. You know what I mean? I don't know. More people need to be brought to justice because these two men literally murdered this man and went about their fucking ways and bragged about it, and everyone they bragged it to was comfortable knowing the information. And so just I don't know. Watch the episode, truly. Like, it's just so sad, and I'm just glad that this family finally got the justice that they so needed and had to wait so long to get. So I'll stop babbling. But yeah, please go watch the ABC in the Cold Dark Night 2020 about this, because it's an amazing story, and like I said, I adored it. So I'm glad you guys finally got justice, and hopefully more people will get justice to follow. And yeah, so please follow me on Instagram at itiswhatitis pod19. That's all together. There's no spaces. On Instagram, it is what it is 208, because that's where I'm from, in my little naive town. And on Facebook, it is what it is, a true crime podcast, and same on YouTube, it is what it is, a true crime podcast. So yeah, have a great week, and I will give you guys another show review on Thursday, and that will be videoed with my face and everything else. But no fear to everybody who does this audio, I will have my audio posted as well. So yeah, talk to you guys on Thursday. Bye.